there was just another hydrothermal explosion at Biscuit Basin in Yellowstone National Park. Now you might remember Biscuit Basin was the site of a really significant hydrothermal explosion a couple of years ago. On July 23rd of 2024, Black Diamond Pool started showing some signs of agitation. Visitors started watching, and just before 10 a.m., there was an explosion that sent rocks flying. It actually destroyed that boardwalk. Now, fortunately, a lot of that explosive energy was directed away from the boardwalk, and that allowed people time to get away, so there were no injuries at the time. But it was a really significant explosion caught on film from many different angles. It was very local to Black Diamond Pool, though. It only affected that particular area. Other features in Biscuit Basin, like Sapphire Pool and Jewel Geyser, behaved like normal after this activity occurred. This particular explosion was caused by pressure changes in the hot water plumbing system just beneath the pool. That hot water, if it flashes to steam, it can drive a really significant explosion, as we saw back then. Now, in response to that explosion, the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory installed some new monitoring equipment. Last summer, a camera went in to look at Black Diamond Pool, also a seismic station, an infrasound station, which monitors low-frequency acoustic energy, and a GPS station to see how the ground is moving. And since last summer, we've seen a lot of eruptions from Black Diamond Pool of varying sizes, not true explosions, but that all changed on June 13th, 2026. Early that morning, just after 5 a.m., right as the sun was rising, there were alarms that went off indicating there was some seismic energy that was picked up, acoustic energy as well, and the camera detected a jet of steam coming not from Black Diamond Pool, but from just a few hundred feet to the north of the pool, just beyond the pool. Another hydrothermal explosion had occurred. It sent water that was full of sediment coursing into the Firehole River, and there were milky streaks that characterized the river for many, many miles downstream. Those lasted several hours as water continued to run out of these new features. Now, geologists explored the area the following day, on Sunday, June 14th, and found a whole bunch of new vents that had thrown rocks many tens of feet. It wasn't nearly as large an event that occurred 2 years prior, but it still had enough energy to throw rocks and break the earth open. There were a couple of cracks that were found. One was 60 feet long and full of boiling water. And when geologists went back on Tuesday, June 16th, they found another feature had formed. This was a circular pool full of boiling water. This one had apparently formed by collapse because there were no rocks around the edges of the pool, nothing that had exploded out. It just fell back in. Now, on June 18th, the webcam that's out at Biscuit Basin observed that this feature was spouting almost like a geyser. It had several periods of this geyser-like behavior. And then on June 23rd, it actually erupted in a single burst that sent steam and boiling water up several tens of feet. So Biscuit Basin remains extremely active. It's closed to visitors because of the damage to the boardwalk and this really dynamic activity. But it really is just this particular area. In fact, this latest explosion didn't even affect Black Diamond Pool, even though it was just a couple hundred feet away from it. Well, that's the story of the recent activity at Biscuit Basin. Now let's talk about seismic activity, ground deformation, and geyser activity that happened elsewhere in Yellowstone National Park over the course of the past month. During the month of June, earthquake activity in the Yellowstone region was at background levels. The University of Utah seismograph stations located 118 events during the month. The largest was a magnitude 2.4, and that occurred on June 7th beneath the south part of Yellowstone Lake as part of a small swarm of events. There were also swarms off to the northeast of the Old Faithful area and off to the northeast of West Yellowstone. That last one is part of this band of seismicity that goes between Hebgen Lake and Norris Geyser Basin or so in the north central part of Yellowstone National Park. This is where most of the seismicity in the Yellowstone region occurs. Turning now to ground deformation, this is vertical deformation at the Lake GPS site on the east side of the caldera. The plot spans the last 2 years. Each one of these blue dots is 1 day of data. Upward trends are uplift, and downward trends are subsidence. Since 2015 or 2016, we've seen overall subsidence by a few centimeters, an inch or two per year. That is interrupted in the summer months by a little bit of uplift due to changes in groundwater conditions. Now in 2025, that uplift just sort of leveled off and didn't turn back into subsidence. So really, since the beginning of 2026, we haven't seen any net deformation in the Yellowstone caldera area. Geyser activity during the month of June was pretty fun. At Steamboat Geyser, the world's tallest geyser, there were just daily temperature variations measured in the outflow channel with a little bit of activity superimposed on top of that due to minor eruptions of the geyser. So no majors at Steamboat, just one so far this year. Nearby Aquinas Geyser, which reactivated this year, had at least one eruption on June 6th. and a couple of overflow events superimposed on this background activity that we see in the outflow channel for that geyser. In the upper Geyser Basin near Old Faithful, there were a couple of noteworthy events. One was the first eruption of giant geysers since last October, and Fan and Mortar Geyser had its first eruption in about 3 years. That's this month's update from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. If you have any questions at all, drop us a line, leave us a comment. Our email address is yvowebteam, all one word, @usgs.gov. We'll see you next month, and until then, stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye.